Before I dive into this insane story, let me give you a quick hook. Imagine owning something passed down for generations, the pride of your family, a piece of land you worked hard for, only to have someone from the homeowners association come storming in, calling the cops, screaming that it all had to be chopped down, without knowing who you really are. Stick around, because you won't believe how it all unfolded, and don't forget to subscribe right now because stories like these only get crazier from here, and trust me, this one has twists you'll never see coming, so hit that button before we dive into what happened when a woman who thought she had power met someone she should never have crossed. It all started on a quiet sunny morning at my apple farm, a farm that wasn't just land to me but a part of my family legacy, stretching back nearly a century. Rows upon rows of apple trees my grandfather had planted when he came to this country with nothing but a few coins in his pocket and a dream of leaving something behind for his children, and eventually, for me, and that farm had become both my livelihood and my sanctuary, a place where neighbors would often stop by to buy fresh apples, sip on cider, and share stories. Yet despite all the goodwill in the community, there was one person who always seemed to have a problem: Karen, the self-proclaimed queen of the HOA. Karen had a reputation that stretched across the neighborhood like a dark cloud. She nitpicked at the color of mailboxes, harassed families for kids leaving bikes out, and even once demanded a man cut down a rose bush because it clashed with the aesthetic. So I wasn't shocked when she set her eyes on my farm, but I never imagined how far she'd actually go. One day, as I was out pruning some of the branches and checking on the harvest, I noticed Karen pacing at the edge of my property, phone in hand, glaring at me like I had committed some unspeakable crime by growing fruit. And sure enough, a few minutes later, 2 police cars pulled up, sirens off but lights flashing, and Karen was pointing wildly at my orchard, yelling at the officers, "This is against HOA rules, it all needs to be chopped down immediately." At first, I laughed because the idea was absurd. This was not just some decorative garden, this was agricultural land, fully registered, taxed, and protected. But Karen didn't care. She was on a mission, waving HOA bylaws like they were holy scripture, insisting that my farm ruined the neighborhood's look, and invited pests. The cops, to their credit, looked skeptical, but Karen was relentless, demanding citations, shouting that the entire orchard had to go, calling me irresponsible, and that's when I realized she had absolutely no clue who I was. I could see the officers glancing at each other, probably realizing they'd been dragged into yet another Karen meltdown, but I stayed calm, leaning against one of my trees, waiting for the right moment, because I knew something she didn't. This land wasn't just mine, it was protected by a trust, part of a larger estate that was tied to one of the most influential agricultural boards in the state, and more importantly, I wasn't just a farmer, I was the chair of that very board, with legal authority that trumped anything her little HOA booklet could muster. But instead of revealing it right away, I let her dig her own hole. She started screaming at the cops to arrest me for violating property rules, and even told them to bring chainsaws and chop everything, like she owned the place, and I watched the officers shift uncomfortably, clearly wishing they could be anywhere else. At one point, she even stomped into my orchard without permission, snapping branches and grabbing apples off the trees to show evidence of the pest problem, and that was the final straw. I calmly asked her to step out, reminding her she was trespassing, but she just smirked, saying the HOA had authority over all land within its reach, and I'd better cooperate before they fined me into bankruptcy. That's when I couldn't hold back anymore, and I told her flat out, "You have no authority here. This farm doesn't fall under your HOA. It's registered farmland, protected at both the county and state level. And in case you need more clarification, I'm the chair of the Agricultural Land Trust. You're threatening not just me, but a state-protected heritage property." The look on her face was priceless. Her jaw literally dropped, eyes wide like she'd just seen a ghost, and for the first time, she was completely speechless. The cops, who had already been skeptical, turned to her and asked if she had any proof of her claims, and when she stammered about HOA rules applying to everyone, one officer flatly said, "Ma'am, this isn't HOA jurisdiction, this is agricultural property, you have no say here," and even warned her she could be charged for trespassing and vandalism for the branches she broke. Karen turned pale, suddenly realizing she had overplayed her hand, but I wasn't done. I pulled out the official documents, showing not only my ownership but also the trust papers, explaining that the orchard had been recognized as a state heritage farm, one that supplied apples for local schools and food banks, and that any attempt to damage or interfere with it could be prosecuted as a crime against public welfare. The officers nodded, clearly impressed, while Karen froze like a statue, her earlier fire completely gone. She tried to backtrack, saying she was only trying to protect the neighborhood, but it was too late. The cops told her to leave immediately and warned her that if she stepped foot on my farm again, she'd be arrested. That should have been the end of it, but Karen wasn't the type to give up quietly. Over the next few weeks, she tried sending me letters from the HOA threatening fines, all of which I ignored because legally they meant nothing, and then she tried rallying other neighbors against me, claiming my farm was lowering property values, but that backfired spectacularly because the same neighbors loved the fresh apples and cider I often gave away, and many of them told her to stop causing drama. But the final twist came when I decided to take it a step further. I organized a harvest festival right on the farm, inviting not just neighbors but local officials, school kids, and even the mayor, turning it into a community event celebrating agriculture and heritage, and guess who had to sit there watching it all unfold? Karen, fuming on the sidelines as she realized not only could she not touch my orchard, but my farm was now the pride of the entire town. The same cops who had been called weeks earlier showed up too, not for trouble, but to enjoy cider and pies, joking with me about their favorite Karen story, and at one point, even the mayor gave a short speech thanking me for preserving the land and contributing to the community. Karen's face was red as a ripe apple, and she stormed off, muttering under her breath, but everyone could see she had been completely defeated. From that day forward, she never dared set foot near my property again, and while she still caused trouble for others in the neighborhood, everyone remembered the time she tried to chop down a heritage apple farm and got humiliated instead. For me, the whole ordeal only made me more grateful for what I had. A farm not just full of apples, but of history, community, and resilience. Proof that sometimes the best way to deal with people like Karen is to let them show the world just how powerless they really are, and when the truth comes out, their empire of control crumbles faster than a rotten apple. So the next time someone tries to tell you to chop down your dreams because they don't like how they look, remember my story, stay rooted, stand tall, and eventually, the truth will silence every Karen who dares to scream. And if you loved hearing this wild roller coaster of a story, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now, because there are plenty more real-life stories where this came from, and trust me, you don't want to miss the next twist that life throws my way.